Today, I want to welcome back City Manager Jeff Dahl to the podcast. Jeff, it's been about a year since we last recorded together. I'm excited to take some time to reflect on all that the city has accomplished in 2022 and give a sneak peek to what's ahead for the coming year.
Who do you think's more excited, Mayor, me or you?
I think you're definitely more excited.
That's good to be here. Thanks for the intro. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. No, I'm just teasing. I am very excited. So in 2022, the city of Wayzata continued to positively evolve with the community it serves. We took on a lot of initiatives. Even though we're a small and charming lakeside community, our operations and services are that of a very large metropolitan area. Right. We provide exceptional service, which is incredibly robust, and we continue to operate at an extremely high level, even with some challenges and some adversity along the way. And we're always looking to evolve and change for our residents and continue to provide high service and new services as well. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit from your perspective what 2022 looked like for you?
Yeah, happy to. And well said. We are such a unique community where we're small. We know when we go down Lake Street, we see people that we know. Yet the expectations of the community, and rightfully so, are that we have a high performing, savvy, employees and organization that we run. So it's a balance. And 2022 was a challenging but great year, I think. There's certainly been a lot of volatility over the past few years, starting especially in 2020. But in 2022, I think we saw a little bit of a return, not even a return, but a new normalcy, some stabilization globally, nationally, and locally. I think 20 and 21 with Panaway, the construction, a lot of construction downtown, externally in the community, there's a lot going on. So cranes, dirt being moved, construction signs. That did have an impact on the community. I think what we heard in 2022 from folks, and we certainly experienced ourselves, that it was a nice kind of, everyone kind of got to take a deep breath. We got over the last 2 years, and we really got to enjoy what we all love about Wayzata, the lake, the people, the restaurants, the great neighborhoods. So from that perspective, I think it was a great year. And I want to applaud the council for during that year to spend a little bit of money and be intentional about getting feedback. So we had the survey, the community survey, early in 2022 to really kind of figure out what do we do well, what can we improve in all of our services. And I don't know if you want to go into the results or not, but they were really positive. But it kind of gave us some good insight on what we do well and how we move into the future. So I thought that was a good component and key component of, or noteworthy accomplishment of 2022 as well.
It really is. And I want to go out on a limb and say 2022 may have been the first year we didn't have a road completely torn up somewhere in town in probably at least 6 years, maybe longer.
Since I've been here, and that's been 6-7 years. Yeah.
So we've always had, if it wasn't a city project, it was a county project, a Met Council project, state projects. So it was nice to not have to divert around traffic cones in the middle of town.
For sure.
So you talked about the survey a little bit. Is that your proudest accomplishment for 2022? Or is there another one?
Well, I think it's my most proud, or it's the best accomplishment just because of the broad information it provided to us. We already knew that we were a great organization. We had great leaders. We served the community well, but it was nice to see that on paper and factually based on a statistically significant, survey. I think just overall though, what I'm most proud of is just the culture that we have. And that stems right from the top with you, Mayor. The culture of collaboration, a culture of working well together, teamwork, being nice to people, and really serving our community. And unlike, knock on wood here, a lot of other organizations, we haven't had a lot of issues with keeping staff and filling positions, because I think it's that culture that the council and the leadership team sets here. And that's what I'm most proud of, for sure. And I think the results are in the survey, which is great.
So let's talk a little bit about the survey. I know that with assistant city manager, deputy city manager, I can never remember the deputy. Thank you. Yeager, she talked a little bit about the survey results, but for those who maybe didn't see that podcast, who are watching this one, can you give some of the high level highlights of how people responded? Because it was a pleasant surprise even for the council. We felt really good about the results.
And you should. And just in a nutshell, the survey scored Wayzata very high in how people feel about their community. They feel extremely safe. They really appreciate the services that we provide. They generally like Panaway and what we're doing. You know, there's clearly concern about just construction and activity, but overall, a vast majority likes where the community is headed and what we've done over the past several years. We also learned that, as we tried different things in terms of communication, like this awesome initiative with a podcast, people still like their portal that they get in the mail too.
They like paper.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So it gave us a lot of information about how we communicate, what we can do better. But overall, if you look at like the direction the city's going, people are really bullish or positive on that. And the core services that we provide, so think of parks, plowing our streets, keeping people safe, we do it really well. So that was good to hear.
Yeah. 5-star service from 5-star staff.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So when you look at 22 compared to 21, what do you think were the biggest changes from one year to the next?
Basically, I would say COVID. So we were still kind of, being very cautious with the services that we provide. We halted some projects. Clearly, like the Muni operations were severely hampered by COVID, especially the bar and grill. So we did lose revenue. But working with our government partners, for the most part, we were able to be made whole. And now in 22, and then obviously in 2022, and now in 2023, we've really had to spend a lot less time on COVID and making sure everyone's safe, because there's less volatility, there's a lot more information, and we can kind of move on to do what we do best, and that's providing those core services. That's
great. So in terms of impacts to the community, talk a little bit about Panaway. What impacts have Panaway had? Because was it 2020? We were getting ready to break ground. All of a sudden, the shutdown was upon us. We had a decision to make as a council. Do we pull the trigger, go ahead with Panaway, or do we wait and see? And we decided to go ahead. Most of the businesses along Lake Street, retail establishments, restaurants were all closed. And it was our small part of continuing an economy, right, where we weren't sure exactly where things were headed. So let's talk a little bit about Panaway. What kind of impacts have you heard and seen in terms of how it affects our businesses, our residents, and the community at large?
Great question. I remember the time you're referring to, like it was yesterday, when we had to decide whether we were going to move forward or not. And I am so thankful that we did. I'm so thankful that the council had to kind of go out on a limb and move forward. To me, that's what leadership is. When there's a little bit of risk, but still keeping your eye on the prize. And it was a great decision because, several reasons. One, it's been a long-term initiative of the community to enhance its shore around Lake Minnetonka, which is our most treasured physical asset. And it allowed us to do that, but it allowed us to take advantage of a very unique part of our time in the country, in the world, where everything kind of stood still. It was
Yeah.
calm, businesses were closed, unfortunately, but we were able to do most of the work during that time, which was probably, at least for construction, the best case scenario. I think it would have been really difficult for us to move forward if we just gotten out of the pandemic, and right when businesses were back and needed to, start making some money, that we closed down the street at that point in time. So not only did we time it right, but also, the pandemic also brought a lot of people outside, and really there's I think a newfound appreciation for public spaces, natural landscapes, and we have this lake that we can better utilize now. So between that and just our dynamic businesses that we have in town, it's been kind of this great alignment of the stars that really has made our town a lot more vibrant even than it was before. Lively, but not rowdy, though.
But not rowdy. That's right. And I think just given the slow transitioning of opening back up, right? It was nice. The weather worked out. The slow rollout of businesses opening, Panaway being done, it all came together probably better than we could have planned ourselves,
right,
in terms of giving people the opportunity to really spend that time outside in a safe and meaningful way. And just to see the smile on people's faces after having been, under lock and key almost, in their own homes, working from home, living at home, all of those challenges that came along with the lockdown. It was really nice to see people outside enjoying the venue and the location. So, it really did work out. And the other benefit, quite frankly, we're experiencing this a little bit now as we talk about phase 2, is had we waited, who knows how long, with the supply chain constraints that are out there in the world and also the labor constraints, how much it would have cost us, how much more,
right,
and if we would have been able to proceed at all.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
and it's been so incredibly successful to where we have this increased level of activity that, as we saw in 2022, that comes as a cost. For people that are out there because they weren't out there now because of COVID and now are out because of the successful restaurants. They're thriving. There's a lot more patios downtown, etc. That we've never been busier in downtown Wayzata. That's great for the most part, but it does tax our services a little bit. So I think you can attest to the budget process and as our number one priority to keep people safe in our community, like our survey showed, we have to continue that. So I know there are some tough decisions from a budget perspective to add to our police department. But we continue as we looked forward to the boardwalk to ensure that we have that covered. And the Wayzata Conservancy is going to be paying for all of the maintenance and operations for the boardwalk, and looking to continue to diversify our budget so it's not just reliant upon property owners to pay for all the services that we provide to everybody, regardless of if they're residents or not.
Absolutely. Now, so you brought up the budget this year.
Sorry.
No, it's a necessary evil in our role, and it lasts a long time. We work on it for 6 months with staff. You guys do the heavy lifting, obviously, but then line by line, we review the budget, and ultimately that equates to the tax levy, which is what our property owners pay.
And that's real. That's a real impact on people's lives.
It is. It absolutely is. And, I'm not going to go into, or not really prepared to talk about all of the inputs to how, people pay, what they pay out of their property taxes. But, from a city perspective, it was a tough year. We were facing a lot of headwinds, obviously. We had, some lost revenue, coming out of COVID. We had, a demand for increased services, particularly in the realm of police services. So additional police officers. Labor markets are incredibly tight, including for police officers. And one of the council's priorities is really to ensure that we maintain those high level of services based on the survey, based on our own experiences, since we're all residents here as well.
Exactly.
And the outcome was the preliminary levy was higher than where we were comfortable. And so thankfully, we were able to sharpen our pencils and bring that down. But let's talk a little bit about what the final levy percentage was and where the majority of those funds ended up getting allocated based on council direction.
Well, good question. And this year's budget, the outcome, I think, was productive, and I think we got to where we needed to go. But certainly it was a little bit more uncomfortable than what we're used to. So for 2023, the overall levy increased 8 percentage points and a little bit more, 8 and change. And primarily what that covered was just overall inflation costs, lost revenue, and increase in public safety services. They can be clearly traced to those three areas. And we like to budget in a box, meaning, what do I mean when I say that? Or in a vacuum, or just because this city or that city is raising their levy a certain percentage doesn't mean we should do that too.
Sure.
So I say that with that caveat, but we were, even though it was an 8% increase, which generally is reflective upon overall inflation, and other cities around the area were a lot higher, it still was uncomfortable for us. So I think we got to a place which we met what the city's needs for services were, but it was uncomfortable, and I hope we can increase either whether it's a cut in services or more than likely, because we know what our residents and community members expect, diversify our revenues so we don't have to do that again.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. The expectations are high, because the level of service has always been high, and we've always tried to push the envelope a little bit more each time. Yeah. We'll call it the 5 seasons experience or 4 seasons experience or Ritz-Carlton experience.
Yep. For Hampton Inn prices, hopefully.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, part of the budget process is also, the primary source of revenues comes from taxes, property taxes. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the other initiatives we're looking at so that we are not, solely relying on taxes. So we have some enterprise funds. Yeah. You want to talk a little bit about those, and then maybe how we're looking to diversify some of those revenue streams?
Happy to, yeah. So we're unique in that we have our own liquor establishments. Now, some cities have liquor stores, but by and large, there's just only a few that have their own bar and grills, especially in the metro. And we are one of those cities. We could have a whole nother podcast about that as to why.
Especially the cheese curds. I encourage everybody to go eat those.
For sure.
Those are the best.
Great beer selection, I may add as well, which pair well with the cheese curds.
There you go. Perfect.
And we know that all too well. But generally speaking, in normal circumstances, both of those enterprises give a significant amount of their margins, their profits back to city operations. So it helps fund general fund. It helps fund filling potholes and plowing streets. So that's a source of revenue, a major source for the organization. Other sources are our motor vehicle department in terms of enterprise funds. Sure. Smaller, but it's a great community service, and they actually contribute as well.
And they have the best service in town.
5-star.
5 stars on Google.
Yep. Just go and check it out. You can see for yourself, which is very unique for DMV. But in addition to those enterprise funds, we also have other ways that the general fund captures revenue. And a lot of those are more user-based fees. So like building permit revenue, for example, you're getting a specific service. There's a use there, and it's not just applied, with a broad brush. It's for a specific service. So we get fees from building permits, fines and fees from the police department's work. Those generally are supposed to offset the service cost. So
I want to pause there for just 1 second.
Sure.
So I want to clarify the fees we get from the police department. So tickets,
right.
we do not get we get a fraction,
which doesn't pay for the entire cost.
Right.
So we're not profiting off of
we absolutely are not
pulling people over.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't write tickets in order to fill the coffers.
Right.
Okay.
And
just want to make sure that's clear.
Yeah.
I said I get a phone call because somebody got a speeding ticket.
I'm glad you point that out because you hear that, that's kind of an urban myth. I can only speak for Wayzata,
right.
And we don't do that, and it's not profitable.
Okay.
We try to keep.
Thank you for
safe.
clarifying.
Yeah.
Okay. Save me a few phone calls.
Yeah, no kidding. So there's other user fees that our budget is built off to, and right now we have. Oh boy, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but we have a franchise fee for gas, but we don't have one for electric. That brings in a significant amount of revenue. There's other fees too. There's grants that we get from, Met Council, the state, Three Rivers. But for the most part, our revenue sources, it's by and large made up of property taxes.
Sure.
So, there are other things that other cities do to diversify their revenue sources. Whether it's, for example, Excelsior charges parking.
Sure.
I don't know exactly how much revenue they get, but it's enough to help their general fund and keep their taxes low. A lot of other cities, I'll use Excelsior as an example, but also like Minneapolis, they charge, they have sales tax. So they have cities that have kind of significant commercial areas that draw people from outside of the city. They look to have that user fee in order to help reduce the burden that the taxpayers has, because ultimately we still have to provide those city services regardless if people are living here or coming here to shop, eat, play, whatever. So we've been looking at that over the past couple of years. How do we diversify our revenues as a commercial destination that has kind of climbed to the top of the list? So,
yeah, you mentioned the sales tax, and it was something that I thought was a lot less common than it actually is.
Right.
As we're exploring all the different options we have available to us, I was surprised Maple Grove and Minneapolis, obviously, Excelsior, Plymouth as well.
Plymouth's got a lodging. It's interesting. A lot of the cities have taken different approaches, but they all get back to assessing a user, which probably is coming from out of that city.
Yeah.
So Edina, Bloomington, many cities in this area have them.
So we're exploring all these different options for diversifying the revenue. One thing, I don't have the numbers, but it certainly seems that we're applying for more and more grants as well.
Yeah.
Certainly more than when I started 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's true? Or are we leveraging that more?
We are. I think it's because we've got more staff. We have more capacity to spend time on that. And we're the city's a net contributor to the state. So there's programs that the state has through their state statutes that take money away from Wayzata and distribute it to the rest of the state. And it is what it is.
Sure.
So how are there ways to kind of make up for that?
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot of money out there that can be used for some of the programs that we have, whether it's AEDs in city facilities, whether it's natural environment enhancements that the Energy Environment Commission's working on, or sewer related stuff that Public Works. There's a lot of opportunities out there, and we have taken advantage of them more, I think, in the past few years. But that's, I think, by and large because the need's there, and the council's been smart where they said, well, this takes capacity, so we need more people to help us do that.
And we've been working with the legislature as well on some of these different initiatives, what might work for us, what might not, and where we feel that we're putting out more in terms of revenue to the state than we're getting back because of our size.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly challenging that a little bit and trying to get back some of those funds, and so we can use them in a different way. And since we are contributing and we have so many people, we have become a destination. We have, and I think we have a compelling case that we're just kind of telling more now, because I think there's a stereotype that Wayzata is affluent, the organization's affluent, and that they don't need any help. But at the end of the day, we're a small town. Not everybody's affluent here. There's people from all different walks of life, and a lot of people utilize our services, and we can't pay for that ourselves. Right. We need help, and I think we've done a better job of asking. And we're just looking for ways also to not put all of that burden just on the residents. Exactly. Right. Yep. So more to come. Yeah. Lots of fun stuff. Yeah. 2022, there were a lot of other really interesting things that staff took on, some different projects, some of our boards and commissions as well. Yeah. So we had the Just Deeds project. What else let's talk about some of those other ones. And that's had great success. Yes. We've had dozens of properties in the community that have been able to, I don't think you can say eliminate, but nullify. Nullify. There you go. Those restrictive deeds or those restrictive covenants. So just for those who might be watching or listening who don't know what the Just Deeds project is, we had pockets within of homes within the city of Wayzata, right, and not just in Wayzata and surrounding communities as well, that had covenants restricting essentially who could buy a house. Right. And this was pre-World War II. Is that correct? Yes. Who could buy a house based on religion, race, etc. Yep. And when those were discovered, this Just Deeds project came about where they were providing legal assistance to the homeowners, the current homeowners, to have those removed. Now, just as a side note, as we discussed when we were finding out about this, they were not legally enforceable. Right. I mean, that was struck down by the Supreme Court in the 50s or 60s. And so they weren't legally enforceable, but it was still important to have a mechanism for those who wanted to have those nullified, for the county to be able to do that. So I think, our community development director, Gellner, worked on that. Yeah. And assistant planner Quarles has kind of co-led the initiative and still is leading the initiative. And the cool thing about it, it's really a partnership between that coalition and our city attorney's office. So the resident that wants to get the deed restrictions or the covenants nullified can really do it without any cost, because otherwise it can take a lot of time and money just to do, I wouldn't say just, but it's because they're not enforceable. It's a symbolic. Absolutely. But it's important. And it's great that we have a mechanism that people don't have to expend a lot of resources to do. There's people that want to help them do that. Absolutely. So that was an initiative that I think we're all really proud of. A couple other things that come to mind for last year, it was the 75th anniversary for the Muni. We spent a lot of time and energy kind of figuring out, well, how should we celebrate? Yes. And show the community that, we love you and we appreciate you. And just celebrate. Yeah, we appreciate you. And yes, we did it. It's been an interesting few years. How do we have that kind of release? And we held a big celebration it was a Saturday in October. We had live music, great food. Elvis and Neil Diamond, Johnny Cash. There you go. Not the actuals. They're all deceased, but it was a great tribute to their music. Yeah. Yes. For those that went, you couldn't tell. You thought that was Elvis. You thought that was Johnny Cash, but that was great. And we also had a special beer that Jeff Petrini worked with Excelsior Brewing on. I think that was unveiled in like May or something. So we had the whole summer of the beer. It was great. It's refreshing, pale ale. And that really kind of led into the celebration in October. So 75 down, hopefully we'll have at least another 75. And I think what we also determined is that
that space that we used for that celebration worked really well.
Nice.
So we're hoping to do that in the future, whether it's like an Oktoberfest kind of thing. I think this first year doing something like that is always the toughest because you have to create processes. But I think we did a good enough job where there's hope to do that again.
Well, I like that. And I mean, 75 years for a bar and grill to exist is an amazing milestone. And I think historically, what is it? There's a stat out there that most restaurants fail in the first 3 to 5 years.
Right.
And here we are in year 75,
Yep.
which is why probably the council just gives so much focus, right, to its success, because it is so important to businesses, that's where they go for happy hour when they're done with work, or, for families to get together, or friends, to gather. We gather there after our council meetings.
Right. We have the beer and cheese curds.
Yes. Well, or something else in cheese curds.
Martini or whatever.
Or a martini. Exactly.
Whatever it may be, yeah.
Yeah, it could be a glass of wine.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
We don't discriminate.
No. All right. So we talked about public safety before. That was a big push. Hiring more officers as well. What are some of the initiatives that the police department took on in 2022, and what will we see in 23?
Well, this is exciting.
Or
to
not
talk to.
see, but know about.
Well, in 2022, it was really the launch of our K9 program, which we're all excited about. Loki and Riggs debuted in 2022. Loki in the front end, Riggs late 2022. Loki is a search and rescue dog, and Riggs is a patrol dog. And why are we doing this? Well, there's several reasons. One is they essentially are more officers. We're a small town, so not always do we have backup for certain situations.
Sure.
So a dog is another officer that's backup, which helps a small staff like we are. They have their own set of skills as a search and rescue dog and a patrol dog. We also think it goes a long way for engagement. Yes, they can be intimidating in certain respects, and during if there's a volatile situation, that might actually be a good thing. But for the most part, I think just the way that society has fallen in love with dogs, for the most part, it's just another kind of way to engage the community. And YZ is very supportive of the police department, which we really appreciate. That makes our life a lot easier here. But I think this only enhances that and gets us out on the street even more. And that's what we're all about. We're all about the people, and having Loki and Riggs on the streets, adding to the services that our fine officers already have and are doing every day. It just only adds to that. So in addition to that, from a part of the budget process, we approved 2 more police officer positions
of the 2-legged variety.
Very good clarification. Of the 2-legged variety. So between 2022 and 2023, we've really bolstered our department to, I think, meet the service demands as requested by the community, as we've seen from the community. In addition, it was so active on Lake Street, so we did put together a community committee that kind of focuses on Panaway. And they talk a lot about public safety. And one of the things that was a recurring theme on Lake Street was just a lot of gatherings and loud cars. So we've prioritized that as an issue. The police department has. And there's some unique things that we've done that you may or may not have noticed if you're out paying attention. One is just increase in signage. So we can't really... It's harder for us to enforce something if it's not clear that there's a law that says you can't have your mufflers unregulated or whatever. So we did a better job of clarifying, adding signage of what people can and cannot do. And then we have this unique system now. They're called flock cameras that can capture license plates. It doesn't capture the person, but if we have a car that's in town that we know has a unregulated muffler or something like that, we'll get an alert so we can catch them in the act if they're
no nuisance.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because otherwise they're so hard. If we get a call someone's being loud, well, by the time the police are there, if they're not on Lake Street, even if it's a minute lag, they're gone.
Well, and no, that's a really good point, because when we recommend that people call 911
Absolutely.
for any kind of situation,
Right.
that goes to dispatch. Dispatch then has to dispatch our officers, assuming they're not already on a call,
Right.
medical call, a traffic stop, whatever the case may be. It's just going to take time. So when you have a vehicle that's already in motion, that makes it incredibly difficult.
Right.
So these cameras are new. They're a pilot program currently.
Right.
And so the council, I'm assuming, will get a report at some juncture, an update on the usefulness and the anticipated costs going forward.
Yeah.
But what I think is really neat is how those cameras can communicate with the officers on duty.
Right.
And so that's really advantageous. And we're fortunate in that, being part of a small community, we can do that.
Right.
We can have those cameras in strategic locations
Mm-hmm.
and have our city covered in a few cameras, as opposed to a larger city, which would,
Yeah.
I don't know how logistically you would do that, but
Right.
yeah. So that's really neat.
Yeah.
And then back to Riggs and Loki,
Yeah.
our four-legged officers.
Mm-hmm.
They've had some successes already.
Right. Yeah.
So Loki being the search and rescue dog, which is, he's only, I think, the only one in the state that's certified for search and rescue. I'm not sure.
It's
That's on a department.
That's on a department, and we have Officer Gurman leading it kind of as a volunteer as well. He's done all that.
For other communities.
Other communities,
Yes.
and he really initiated this through Wayzata too. So it's the only circumstance where, we've had that dynamic with Sergeant Gurman doing it, kind of on the side, and then bringing Loki in. And now, yeah, it's a unique setup, and we're grateful for it.
So he was able to, so when we talk search and rescue, it's not just simply a lost child call or a vulnerable adult, although those are equally important, but it's also perhaps a criminal search for someone, a suspect.
Sure.
So it's any one of those.
Yep.
Because my initial thought is, when I think of search and rescue, is, oh, somebody wanders away,
Right.
and we can't find them. But that's really great. And then Riggs had some early on success as well. He was performing well, like straight out of canine kindergarten, or I'm not sure.
I might not be as familiar with Riggs' most recent success, but was he just the head of the class, essentially, of the training?
Yes. Well, I'm always going to say yes, because I take particular pride in our dogs. But I think he was right out of school, and they had a call for someone who they were searching for. Mm-hmm. And he was able to clear a building before the officers went in. So to the officer safety component, there was nobody in the building, thank goodness. But Riggs, if I'm remembering all of the details correctly. So all of this with
right.
a grain of salt, but his handler was incredibly proud of him. So by very virtue of that, I am too.
And Officer Sealand is his handler, and it's not only the dog that has to endure a lot of training and pass, it's also the handler too. So yes. Officer Sealand, who is a great local, community member, has been for a long time. He stepped up to the plate and wanted to add more skills to his police officer, being a police officer, and he's done a great job. And he's taken on a lot, and it's good to see that kind of now that they're done with training, because it's extensive, to see it in full force. And
our Crime Prevention Coalition, they were really great in helping to support this endeavor as well with donated funds, and they really did a great job. And we appreciate the families too who are willing to take the dogs in, because the dogs don't stay here overnight. They go home with their handler. And they have an extended family here, but they have a family at home too.
Yeah, this is boring, but we the city was able to get 3 union contracts approved throughout this past year. But one of the unique things is that we had to add the canine component into those contracts, which it brought to what you just said, like who's paying for a cage, because there's got to be a cage at home. And what about the foundation or the footings for the cage? All that was discussed. It was unique, but it's all for a great initiative. And we were only able to do it because we had a great staff. So Officer Seeland, Sergeant Gehrman, but also community supporters like the Wayzata Crime Prevention Coalition who helped fund the effort. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to do it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know that we did a lot more than that in 2022. We had an election.
Yeah.
We have 2 new council members. As part of that, well, we have 1 new council member and 1 who was newly elected. She had been appointed 2 years prior to fill my seat when I took this role. And then, the staff and the election judges, I mean, everything just has gone off without a hitch.
Yeah. Props to City Clerk Kathy Learvig, because she runs it's not a show. It's not a performance. It's a great operation. And if you talk to any of the election judges or just, all the residents know if they've been into City Hall, they're so kind, so nice, but they're smart and they know what they're doing too. And we've had great success with our elections, no issues at all. And I think that the best thing that shows that is the turnout.
Absolutely. We have great turnout and it's incredibly efficient. I don't think I've ever had to wait longer than 5 minutes to come in and vote, which is great when we're all so busy and running around. But it's an important aspect of what we do. So
for sure.
Now we started, as we wrap up today, I just want to talk about one last thing. And we started in 2022, some conversations with other fire departments. And that'll be going on into 2023 and beyond. You want to talk a little bit about the nature of those conversations and what we've been exploring with other communities? Yeah,
happy to. It's exciting. It's really led by many cities, but I think Long Lake kind of initiated it a few years ago. It's just talking about the potential establishment of a fire district. How do we, in this day and age where staffing's more difficult and, people are so busy, how do we use resources more efficiently? And especially when we're talking about a big geographic area and with equipment that costs so much, how do we just maximize that and ensure that when someone calls, they're getting a good response, they're getting the care that they need.
And there are a lot of redundancies. Yeah. And when we look at where our partners are and where they're located in terms of other departments, there's a lot of redundancy within a small geographic area as well. It's not to say that that's not a good thing,
right,
but is it operating in the most efficient manner possible?
Right.
And I think that's, and consistently, right? Are the departments managed consistently? Because ultimately it's about providing the highest level of service and fire response, regardless of the call and regardless of where somebody lives.
Right. And that's what this district is set up to explore but balance the other component of firefighting and the culture and the community kind of rootedness of it all and the traditions
and the history,
and not to lose that, but also we want to, be sustainable long into the future. So what are some ways we can move forward and maximize and be more efficient? So, whether it's sharing equipment, whether it's looking at, a broader kind of, so like in Oregon, for example, we've got a guest that comes to these meetings who was in a fire district in Oregon where there's a taxing authority. So it's the revenue comes in separately from city. There's totally different ways to do this.
Absolutely.
But the goal of this group is just to kind of talk about that and what are some kind of maybe baby steps we can take, knowing that this is an iterative process. It's going to take some time, but what are some steps we can take to be more efficient and sustain ourselves?
I think identifying the synergies
Yeah.
And leveraging that, and especially the long-term relationships we've had with surrounding communities.
Right.
I think it really helps facilitate those conversations.
Yep. And I'm great. I'm hopeful, and I think we'll adapt how we need to adapt, because we got great leaders. We got great leaders at the council. We got great leaders in the fire department that what they really care about is the people that they serve. So
absolutely,
we'll figure it out.
So we have a lot coming up in 2023. We've got the boardwalk down on the lake. We're undertaking the Wayzata Boulevard corridor study that already started, but that's in process. We talked about some of the police initiatives, police department initiatives, of sidewalk on Ferndale Road. What else? We're exploring Clapperage Park improvements. A lot. It's a long list.
A lot going on. And
yes.
Meanwhile, this is probably an annoying kind of tone, but we're all trying to figure out how do we bring in different sources of revenue to help pay for all this. So We'll be working on that too.
Well, we did identify several already.
Yep.
Like the sidewalk, right? So some of the construction we've seen on Lake Street,
yep.
Some of those TIF districts are going to help pay for that.
For sure.
Clapperage Park, they're looking at the park more holistically than what they had been prior.
Right. Exactly.
So that might 2023, 2024, maybe early 24, when we have kind of a plan and a cost associated with that. Exactly. And then the new boardwalk.
You excited for that?
I am.
Me too.
I'm going to have to I'm going to save my vacation time at work for when my phone starts ringing. No, I think it is going to be just such a shift in the accessibility for all people, regardless of ability, to be able to get down to the water, to experience the lake in a different way. And it's one of its kind, certainly in the Midwest and maybe in the country. And other people have maybe done it, but there will be nothing like this one. And I'm really just amazed at the number of years of planning and work by so many people, the partners we've established over the years. And it will be quite a sight to behold. It'll be difficult over the summer when that gets underway, but it'll all be built from the water, from a barge. Right. So no disruption from the lakeshore.
Shouldn't be any.
But it'll be interesting, and quite a celebration when it's done.
It's been a long road, or a long boardwalk, long pier. I don't know.
More dad jokes.
But nothing that I would like to say to staff that will listen anyway. Nothing really transformational or really something that matters happens easily. And this hasn't been easy, but I agree with you. I think it's going to be great, and it's just going to add so much more value to the community. We're all about the lake. Wayzata is here because of the lake. Absolutely. So this is an investment into the lake, and I think similar to there was a lot of not skepticism but concern about removing the parking lot.
Yes.
Well, I don't know about you when you're out on Lake Street, but what I hear about the parking lot is, why the heck didn't you guys remove that a lot earlier?
I know. And there was some pushback,
for
right?
sure.
There was some pushback initially.
Yeah.
But it's even hard to imagine what it looked like back then, now that we've had this for a couple of years, and it's so much more enjoyable.
It was the right thing to do. We did it for the right reasons, and I feel the same about the boardwalk too.
Yeah. Absolutely. So people can go out to the city's website for the 2022 annual report.
It's all there. Yeah.
It's all there. And that's at wayzata.org/annual report.
It's very user friendly. And, I put a lot of the material together with the help of the department heads, but Liv Lasky, our communications coordinator, she does everything. Just in general, but also she makes it look so nice. So, for all those folks that are out there that would not be impressed by a a Word document that get from me in an email, trust me, you'll like the way this looks and reads.
No.
It's a really nice report.
It really is. I really appreciate it. I think the council appreciates it and the community as well. It really kind of encapsulates at a high level what all the departments have been doing and showcases the hard work
Right.
that everybody does. So we're very much appreciative and certainly appreciate Miss Lasky's efforts on this and
For sure.
everything else she does. So thanks, Jeff. Great to see you.
See you again soon.
See you soon, like in maybe 10 minutes when we head out for our meeting.
Can't wait.
I know. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor.